And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Life from the Inside Out. If you're new here, welcome to our little corner on the internet, where in just a few moments, Serge is going to be doing some deep trance channeling, where we'll bring in Kris and talking about various metaphysical issues. So, if that's of interest to you, please stick around. If you're back, it's good to have you again. And we're glad you're here. And just a reminder, you could visit the website, get on the newsletter, which is going to get you updates, as well as comment below. We're going to be over time taking questions from the viewers, and I know there's been plenty, and Kris will pick up on that and get them into the episodes. So we were just talking about dreams, and dreams is the building blocks of our reality. And I was wondering about with recalling some of these dreams, these would give us direct information about our reality construction. And we had some really interesting info on the understanding time and time dilation in relation to these dreams. So I'm hoping we can build on that in this episode, Serge.
Oh, that's very cool. Why don't we just go ahead and do that?
Yeah, sounds good.
Now we trust that you are comfortable again, and we
Yes.
thank you for your consideration.
Oh, thank you, Kris. Thank you.
The discussion on dreams can be quite profound, though it does require that your species acclimatize themselves to also accepting that that you are more than just the physical assemblage of cells and cellular structures. Is not all that you are, but it is an important component. Again, to return to the topic of time dilation, there is also something that runs in with time dilation in physical experience, in the physical waking experience. That may be a little trickier to explain and understand, but do know that just as time doesn't seem to exist in the same way you understand it in dreams, time as you think you understand it in physical reality is also subject to a few loopholes, some very interesting ones. You do not necessarily notice it because you are accustomed to understanding that you have a past, your race has a past. Thousands of years ago, your descendants or ancestors were running around on knuckles. They began to discover certain tools. They discovered fire, moved a little forward in time, and they made megalithic structures and ancient temples and pyramids, now to the point where they are making rocket ships and so on and so forth. But we would have to say that just as time dilation exists in dream states, in physical states, there is a variation on the theme, and it stems from its roots in dream time. And physical dilation exists along the lines of being able to notice ancient civilizations alongside yours, and it appears to you that these ancient civilizations are but remnants of something long gone, almost forgotten to history. Because you have prejudiced perception, you wear psychological blinders that keep you focused in your idea of time, which does not exist in reality. What you see, say, as ancient Egypt, ancient Angkor Wat, ancient Mesopotamia, Assyria, Sumerian, and so on. These civilizations still exist in function, just as you think they did, and more. But because you view time in a linear fashion, you think these are past civilizations, so you psychologically block out how they still continue to this day. You see them as you think they exist. So you only see as far as your thinking allows you to. Were you to more or less see in imagination something different, you might begin to get glimpses of how other cultures and civilizations still function. Now, you could say that someone is digging in an ancient civilization as an archaeologist or pseudo archaeologist or an explorer in that way. You might even think, oh, yes, because they might have had a past life in that civilization. And to your logical, rational mind with linear thinking, that makes perfect sense. But what if the archaeologist or the explorer digging in a so-called ancient civilization actually is living in that ancient civilization, and an exploration of their dreams might give some clues. They might actually experience themselves functioning in such an ancient civilization in a very legitimate manner, but because you have no reference point according to your linear visions of time, you cannot fathom that you can exist in both places at once. And to you, it can only be if you had a past life, say in ancient Egypt, or Gobekli Tepe, or Kahandar Tepe, or others, without realizing that they exist simultaneously. Time in this way and space is nested, but you wear these psychological blinders. Does that make some sense to you?
Yes, I'm wondering with that example of the person digging and perhaps unearthing a Sumerian artifact and them having a concurrent life there, with that physical act of digging, there's also a dream, like on the dream layer, symbolically, it might symbolize them digging or moving towards a contact or understanding of that life that's going on at that current moment. Is there some truth to that?
There is, and they could actively also have another aspect of their inner life interacting in that kind of an environment, while also being physically active in, say, the present moment in 2023. They can straddle both streams of time simultaneously, just like you are sleeping and yet you are dreaming that you are, say, flying to a foreign land. So you're doing two things at once. You are existing here in this particular area of space and time, and yet you are also in your dream body flying. And the plane representing a portion of your consciousness, a movement of consciousness. So you're utilizing that as a symbol for allowing yourself to travel and explore the self that you are in another node of time, an ODE, another node of time. So you have multiple experiences simultaneously, but you have no foundation in your present life, in your present world, to actually understand these kinds of events in that fashion. To you, it only makes sense that you're having a wild dream or that you are having a memory of a past life. Well, it may still be going on in simultaneous time, in simultaneous terms. So there are all these nodes of time that exist in multiple fashions. You have pockets of time. And within a pocket of time, you may have other pockets of time. For instance, let's say someone in England visits an old village, say from the 14th or 13th or 12th century, and they can still see some of the old houses, how they were, what they look like, and they begin to get a feel for that time period. So, in another way, that individual might be using their consciousness to visit that particular pocket of time. It still exists, but it has to be interpreted according to what he or she thinks must be the present moment. Therefore, that must be an ancient time, but it still exists. So those pockets of time exist all over the universe. In fact, in Vedic writings, these subjects exist and have existed for thousands of years. And your present culture is only beginning to speculate about these things. The notion of time dilation, space dilation, physical location being altered and changed, being able to travel from one universe to another. That and those concepts have been around for thousands of years. Now, some people just consider this total gobbledygook. How could it be? And yet they were effectively able, thousands of years ago, effectively able to fairly closely calculate the distance between the sun and the earth without telescopes, without any scientific means according to your present society. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it seems like they just had different means of utilizing the intuitions that we could begin to understand too in our present time.
Indeed, and your intuitions tied to your dream experiences are not just about a few insights or predictions about the future, but so much more. They explore the very concept of reality creation from the point of view of dream time and dream experiences, as we suggested, the very building block or foundations of your physical experience. You build your reality according to your concepts, but these have to come from somewhere else. You do not invent concepts, they already exist. You simply reassemble them in a different order, in an order that makes sense to the manner in which you explore your version of physical reality. So there are so many different ways to view your reality that may be frightening in a certain way because you're accustomed to everything being one way. You have understood reality one way and you think you understand it. But now, if you start changing the game, it might be a little unsettling, so to speak. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I'm following you.
You imagine, for instance, that you are the first civilization on Earth to invent automobiles. The Industrial Revolution, you cannot imagine, might have occurred many different times in what you call the past. Your own world appears to only be so old and with so many factors, and yet this is just one of multiple universes with worlds similar to yours, with beings similar to yours that have existed from time immemorial and that still do. So the concepts and notions of time and space that your species plays with, though insightful in their own way, are in their infancy. You are learning slowly that your world is perhaps not the only world, but you still speculate because your instruments do not seem to reveal to you that there are other life forms on other planets. Even though you want to dearly discover this, it will still take time because you must first come to the understanding that your own perceptions are quite limited. For as much as you think you have expanded your intellect, you also need to expand your emotional feeling nature and not be afraid of your own emotions. That is partially what is holding you back. Plus, you're afraid to lose your meaning about life. This is an issue we will discuss in the next set of workshops. The mention we made some time back that your species is a maker of meaning will be explored more in depth.
Yeah, I would have to imagine that an event like discovering other sentient species would absolutely shatter certain religious or even spiritual belief systems.
Indeed, it would. And it would cause a deep rethinking of everything you thought you knew about life. So it is an kind of event that your species is collectively managing very precariously because you do not want to upset your collective apple cart, even though on the one hand, you or some of you hunger for discovering other life on other worlds, you are still convinced that this other life might simply wipe you out in an instant without even considering that this other life may also be able to help you open your eyes to the true nature of the universe. It will not save you. It will not come for that purpose. It will not be discovered for that purpose because you do not need saving. But you do need to understand the nature of creation and specifically the nature of meaningfulness and love. You may think perhaps this is a little trite, but it is far more significant and important than you can assume. Does all of this make sense?
Yeah, and there would be on the flip side, although it may be destructive to some people's belief systems, for others open to that or understanding their dream self or their intuitive self more, it may be a very meaningful experience that deepens their own personal meaning in a very profound way.
Indeed, it will, though you're not quite ready yet to step forth into that kind of adventure. And it is not something that we or anyone can say, well, yes, Thursday, the 5th of November 2027 is when you will have a contact. It does not work like that.
So going back to our discussion on dreams, could we explore that probability in that realm, even though we might not be seeing it physically yet?
You would first have to become accustomed to manipulating and managing your dream bodies. Just like if you want to breathe underwater, you must wear the proper equipment. Otherwise, you will drown. So to travel into foreign dream landscapes, into the psyche of another form of intelligence, you need to have the proper equipment, which means you must cultivate greater awareness of your different dream bodies. As we suggested, there are dream bodies that allow you to float just a few inches off the ground or off the floor. There are other dream bodies that allow you to float through walls. There are other dream bodies that allow you to, say, even float through the roof, up over the skyline, up over the trees. There are other dream bodies that may allow you to travel out into the stratosphere. Other dream bodies that may allow you to travel into outer space. Other dream bodies that you would refer to as astral bodies that allow you to travel through inner psychological space. There are other dream bodies that will allow you to travel to other dimensions and realities altogether. But you must first become familiar with the dream bodies that you operate so that you can then eventually, say, unveil those deeper, more etheric dream bodies. There is a particular kind of dream body that to an observer might simply appear as a zephyr, a gentle breeze, which does not necessarily make sense, but it does not have any particular conformity to your ideas of a body. It is an extremely subtle body. That one can travel into deeper regions of psychological space. And even this particular dream body is closely aligned with the concepts of essence, though it is not necessarily that yet. It is closely aligned with it, where the laws of physics function in a snap. Just thinking, say, of traveling in the most beautiful, most recent Rolls Royce, which is instant. Whilst in physical time, as you know it, it takes quite a while for that automobile to be built and for you to purchase it if ever you get there. So in that extremely subtle dream body, thought concepts, ideas are constructed instantaneously. From that come the building blocks that literally trickle down, if you want to, into the ideas that you utilize to build or construct your physical reality in all of its aspects. Not just houses and such, but even the environment, the trees, the mountains, the air, the water, the clouds, and your own ideas about yourself and who you think you are. But these come from deeper within you. And we should also say that even though those particular different dream bodies seem to imply a physical traveling in location. Actually, there is no physicality or physical energy spent at all. It is done through the inner self. It is all psychological, which is the nature of your experience. Psychological. When you have inner experiences, that is your reality. The rest, what you experience with senses, is sensory reality. It is feedback mechanism for your inner experience. So it may incur some degree of distortion because it has to be translated in terms that suit your physical senses, your ears, your eyes, your nose, your tongue, your touch, and all of that. It has to conform to that to then be reinterpreted. So you deal with interpretations of interpretations of interpretations and so on. Still all valid, just different degrees, different nested positions, different nested experiences. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I'm gonna be digesting that for a little while, I think. But yeah.
Indeed. You might have to sleep on it.
Oh, yes.
But
Maybe.
if you take into consideration what we have discussed and listen to it carefully, even multiple times, and allow your mind, especially as it gets near to sleep time, allow your mind to still dwell upon the subject matter. You might find yourself starting to experience different kinds of dreams that are worth writing down. We do not speak simply to produce hot air. When we speak, if you listen to it, it can trigger experiences in that manner. It is meant to do that. Now, what is the time?
Yeah, well, I think we are getting kind of towards the end of another wonderful episode. So, yeah.
Indeed, we highly suggest to listeners, again, to listen to these two discussions about dreams and inner realities, time dilation, space dilation, reality dilation, nested realities, and let your imagination have fun. Allow it to become the building blocks for a new state of perception. There is a fine writing at the bottom of all of this. That if you do this, your previously conceived notions of time and space might suddenly be upended, even incrementally. But then again, you have chosen to view and listen to this video and conversation. So there you have it.
Well, and then eventually, when we acquiesce to that, we might be able to do something with that new knowledge of the time and space and upending.
Indeed. And we would suggest additionally that if you do, as we suggested, in a best way you can, write about your experiences, write your questions, send them in. This may open up a whole new set of discussions that are already nested in time and space, but not yet in focus. So your questions would bring it in. There are, as we suggested, pockets of time. There are pockets of space. There are pockets of dream time you know nothing about. And that could trigger some of those pockets to come in front and center.
Yeah, there you go. Some of our viewers might have ventured into some of those areas. So bring those questions and we can explore that together.
Indeed, in fact, you might recognize that you've already had similar experiences as described to one degree or another, and this just puts the cherry on top and allows you to recognize that this has already happened to you, including your famous deja vu. It is not as if you're having a neurological brain fart when you have an experience of deja vu. There is definitely a nested time dilation experience with time and space. And the more you allow it, the more interesting it gets. And with that, we will thank you for your consideration. And we return Joseph to you in whatever time space you end up in.
All right. Thanks so much, Kris.